Survivors, Flood, Mississippi, 1927, Chapter 3, Part 1. Survivors, Flood, Mississippi, 1927, Chapter 3. Molly straightened up, glancing uneasily at the river. It seemed to stretch all the way to forever. She wondered if the people on the Arkansas side of the river were as worried as everyone in Mississippi. Her father and Lawrence were positioning the last 2 bags. Breathing hard, Meacham stood to one side. The low spot in the levee was repaired now, the new sandbags holding the pressure of the water. It had taken hours. Molly had brought noontime biscuits and pie, then stayed on to help. The rain picked up a little. Molly saw her father shake his fist at the sky. "We'll never make a cotton crop if this won't let up," he shouted. Lawrence scuffed his foot across the sandbags. "Charlie says his pa's going to plant corn next week, no matter what." "He's a fool if he does," Pa snapped. "The seed will just rot." He hitched up his overalls. "We're going to walk along the levee, see if Mrs. Wood needs any help. Molly, you go tell your ma that everything is all right now." Molly stared at the new sandbags. They were already turning dark, the color of the rolling water. "Molly, you hear me?" "Yes, Pa," she answered. Her father made a shooing motion. She turned and made her way back along the levee. There was a nearly constant stream of trucks now. It seemed like everybody and his brother were trying to keep the river from flooding. She was chilled, so she ran down the long incline of the levee to warm up, then kept running, startling the mules when she splashed past their corral. "Everything is all right," Molly said as she opened the door, before her mother could notice Pa and the boys weren't with her. Then she explained where they had gone. Her mother lifted her hands toward heaven. "That levee scares me to death." She straightened her apron. "Hope is napping, so maybe we could get started shelling butter beans. One of these days that upper garden has to dry out enough to plant." Molly nodded. Pa had built shelves along the rear wall of their little parlor. He was smart, Molly thought, as she pushed aside the pink draperies Ma had made to cover the containers of seeds. The mice and mildew in the barn were bad any year. This year the moisture would have ruined all the seed. The butter bean hulls rustled in the half-bushel basket as Molly carried it out to the work table in the kitchen. Her mother was wiping the table clean with a dishcloth. "I wonder if we will get enough of a crop to be able to put up any beans this year," she sighed. "The home demonstration agent that was up in Rolling Fork last month told Hannah Franklin that it isn't safe to can beans without a pressure cooker." Molly looked out the window. The rain was letting up. "Those ladies say a lot of things that would sure surprise the old-timers. My mother put up beans every year. No one ever got sick that I can recall." Molly nodded, her hands automatically beginning to work. She pinched the brittle hulls just hard enough to pop them open. Then she ran her thumb down the inside curve of the pod, first one side, then the other. The beans rattled into the clean bowl her mother had brought. Molly deftly flipped the empty hulls to the other end of the table. "The cistern is full. I dragged the cover back over it. The water looks a little cloudy. I'm going to start boiling it. Vera May says the telephone operators down in Vicksburg are telling everyone who places a call to boil their water for 20 minutes. She says they're afraid of epidemics." Molly half listened. Her mother was lonely, she knew. They hadn't been to church in 3 weeks. The building stood in a low spot. It was flooded up to the choir loft. Molly's hands went about their work as her thoughts strayed to Garrett and their new raft. Last year's rope had come from a washed-up crate they had found, and it had rotted. Garrett thought he'd seen some in a shed at his place. She just hoped there was enough. "You're sure not talkative today," Molly heard her mother say once the bowl was nearly full of beans for the 3rd time. "I'm sorry." Molly stood to clear off the dry hulls, dumping them into the kindling box. She looked sidelong at her mother. "I guess I'll go out if you don't need any more help." Molly saw a frown cross her mother's face, and she felt a little guilty. "I know what you're up to," her mother said. Molly ducked her head. "Your father and I just don't want your feelings hurt, Molly. In a year or 2 that boy's going to have his own friends." Molly refused to answer. They had had this talk before. "You be home well before dark, young lady," her mother said. "That gives you less than an hour." Molly knew Ma liked Garrett. He was always polite and respectful, and he kept his fingernails clean, like a storekeeper. If she hadn't liked him, it wouldn't matter what color his skin was. She'd have kept Molly home. "If you're going, you'd better hurry." "I'll be as quick as I can," Molly said. She kissed her mother on the cheek, then went out.